a podcast by the Sagos Group. We're an international leader in learning and development with over 1,500 specialists all around the world in 14 different countries, working with the globe's most exciting brands. My name is Millie Gladstone. I'm your host. I'm one of the senior L&D consultants based here in our UK office in London. In each episode, we're igniting ideas, exploring bold strategies, and sparking meaningful conversations with thought leaders, change makers, and learning pioneers from around the world. So whether you're leading teams, developing talent, or driving transformation, this is your space to stay inspired and stay ahead. Today's topic is all around balancing formal and informal relationships in the management space and is part of our leadership and management mini-series that we're hosting here. Joined in the studio today, I've got two of my fantastic colleagues. Thank you for being here. I've got Sharon Wiggins, who's our People and Performance Manager, and also Rachel Seiss, another one of our senior L&D consultants. So Sharon, can you just give us a quick overview of what it means to be a People and Performance Manager at Sagos?
Yes, of course, no problem. Yeah, so my role is a bit of a dual role, actually. So I am People and Performance, or most people probably know it as HR. As well as then Customer Delivery Manager. So Customer Delivery Manager is supporting our lovely senior L&D consultants across the business, well, anyone actually in the business, in terms of our clients, our delivery, our training, whatever we're doing is to try and make sure those projects are run smoothly and efficiently. And then the People and Performance side is to look at things like policies, procedures, be open for anyone to come over for a coffee, get ideas, and then corporate social responsibility to make sure we're doing all the right things for us, but also the world.
CSR, very important.
It is very important.
Just a small role then.
Yeah, just no pressure. Just a little bit on the side with all the other stuff that you're working on, no worries. And Rach, what kind of stuff are you working on?
Yeah, so as a senior L&D consultant, my job is to talk to lots of our amazing customers, and I work predominantly in the management and the leadership space. So I do everything from having great meetings with our clients to going through to designing and delivering bespoke and off-the-shelf programs. One of our big clients that I work with and I lead on is the Airbus account. So we run the Airbus Global Graduate Programme and we talk about all things soft skills. We get to meet people from all across the world in person and run workshops on topics like management, leadership, soft skills, all of that lovely stuff. It's good fun.
Hundreds of excited grads just running around for a whole week.
Absolutely.
Learning loads. Well, I think we're well primed for today's topic then. We've obviously got the kind of people expert from our side of the business. You help us with all of our kind of internal people things. And Rachel, you are always out and about delivering management and leadership programs as well. So what a lovely balance we have. So obviously we're talking today about informal and formal relationships, particularly in the workplace, because this is a work-related podcast. So I guess just to start us off, a little starter for 10 question. Sharon, I'll start with you. How would you describe your natural management style?
Well, my natural style is definitely informal. And over the last, 20 years, I've managed many different scenarios, many different people, many different teams. And I've always found to go with your natural personality works best, because otherwise you're being a fake person at the end of the day. So I'm definitely informal.
Informal but authentic.
Authentic, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Jinx.
Yeah, definitely.
And how about you, Rach?
I really like that piece around authenticity. I think for me, I can't turn up to work and be a different person to who I am at home. So I have that, that really informal, like authentic management style, I would say. I think that can cause potentially, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, some concerns around how do you draw the line between being a friend with the person that you manage versus having to step into that like more formal role. But I would like to think that as a manager, I'm authentic. I like to hopefully empower the people that I manage, so not micromanage. Maybe because I'm a bit too lazy to micromanage, probably. I don't have the time myself. So, empowering people to do things themselves, feel trusted to get on with tasks themselves. But yeah, that comes with some difficulty and grey areas as well.
So building the strong relationships there, giving people the autonomy
Yeah.
to actually handle their work as and how they see fit as well.
Yeah, and then being there to support if needed. You know, if that means that I need to step in to review work, or perhaps things like, you know, giving some solutions in a sort of like coaching relationship. I've done quite a bit of coaching in my past life, and you know, I think that's an important part of managing someone, is empowering them through not necessarily giving them answers, but being there to support if needed.
And I guess my next question is, how did you sort of get to that point? How did you develop that style? How did you realise, you know, actually I need to be authentic and give autonomy and whatever it might be? Is there like a particular moment that stands out for you as kind of that moment of, okay, this is how I want to lead, this is how I'm going to do it? Or has it come kind of more naturally?
Well, for me, I think I've watched many people lead teams, and you draw the best bits, I think, that you feel comfortable with from the leaders that you've watched. You know, I've seen a few things that I wouldn't want to do, and so I've taken the best bits that I feel comfortable and used those. So, you know, just being friendly, open, communicate well, trust is a big part of that, I think. So being informal, as we talked about a moment ago, gives people the sort of the door, I suppose, to be able to come and talk to you if needed. And people in performance is really important, that people feel comfortable being able to talk to someone. And if I was more formal every day, I think people would find that more difficult to say, oh, you know, has she got an open door policy, or is she, oh, she looks a bit stern today or something. So having that sort of openness every day helps, I think, with all of the range of conversations. You know, I had an example the other day where someone rang me and said, I've really made a mistake. You know, they were devastated, and it was a really small mistake, but they could pick up the phone, say it out loud. It alleviated all of the pressures they were under on that moment, and we came up with a solution together using the coaching element to help them come to their own decision on how they were going to handle that situation, and then they've learnt from it. So
that's so interesting, isn't it? And kind of what you're saying about having to be kind of open and friendly, so people do feel comfortable coming to tell you about their issues and their problems. Do you ever feel an element of pressure, like actually, because, you know, sometimes you actually just are in a bad mood and you know, didn't sleep well, or you know, whatever, got stuck in traffic on the way into work. How do you kind of find it in you to remain friendly?
Well, I think you've just got to imagine how you want to be treated yourself.
Yeah.
And so as I walk through the door, from your personal life to all the things that go on there, and at work yourself as well, that you've got to think about, I think you just put that, okay, this is my role, this is the important part of my role, and I need to come in and be that person for everyone that's there. So
Very professional. We're lucky to have you.
Oh.
I think that discipline is really interesting, because I think sometimes it can be difficult to come in through the door and to remember, you know, you've got a responsibility for a team that you manage, and you need to be aware of all the little things that you do that might rub off on them. So I think when I first started managing here at Sagos, I hadn't really thought about how my demeanour every day could actually have an impact on how someone was feeling. And, you know, even that small thing of how you ask someone to come to a meeting, and how you are really careful in your word choice and all of that. I think I had a kind of dawning realisation that I have to be really careful about how I speak to the people that I manage, so that I'm professional and friendly and open, and not going too far down either end of the spectrum if I've had a terrible day or a rubbish commute, which happens to me regularly. That I just, have that discipline as I walk through the door, to just remember to be authentically me, but the management version of me.
Yeah. And it's a hard line, I guess, to balance sometimes, isn't it? So TFL, if you could just sort out all your trains, we'd all be better managers, really, is what I'm hearing.
Please.
But I think that kind of role modelling part that you're picking up there as well, and I guess it's kind of linked to what you were saying as well, Sharon, but you have to show up how you want your team to show up as well. So if you can show up and be open and problem solve when things go wrong, also that means your team are naturally more comfortable coming to you because they know, okay, we can sort this out together, we're problem solving together, and I will show up to that meeting looking professional because Rachel's setting the standard for me. So has there ever been a situation then where maybe you have been really friendly with somebody on your team, and something has gone a bit wrong and you've had to have a difficult conversation, or that informal relationship has got in the way? Are there any standout moments or experiences that you can share with us?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I said at the start, having a tendency towards being a bit of a people pleaser and wanting to be friends with everyone, I think it means that I've had many situations in the past where I've kind of thought, okay, this is maybe a little bit too informal. And then it becomes quite difficult to switch into the formal side of things. My background is in education, and I spent over 7 years as a secondary school teacher. And a big part of that, whilst I wasn't a manager per se, I was a mentor, and I mentored quite a few teachers in their early careers. Often a little bit older than me and often from different experiences. And I was guilty in the start of kind of trying to be friendly with them because I'd walked their path, I'd been in their shoes, I knew what it was like to be a new teacher, and I felt a lot of empathy for them. But I think I let that empathy cloud my judgment sometimes, thinking the best of people when actually maybe there were situations where they needed a little bit more tough feedback, because we all need a bit of like constructive feedback in certain times of our careers. And there were times when I felt too guilty to give that feedback because I'd spent so long building this real honest rapport with them that I then just felt like, how am I going to deliver this in a way that's really meaningful and still has that element of being kind, which I found really difficult when I was a bit younger.
Yeah. Makes me think of radical candor actually being challenging, but also being caring.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as well, isn't it? I think that, sometimes in the workplace, especially if we do have the tendency to be people pleasers, maybe, we fall not into the trap, but we then start to feel guilty if we have to give or have a slightly more serious conversation with someone. But actually, thinking about my relationships outside of work, I think some of the best friendship circles I'm in are the ones where you can say, actually, that's not right, you shouldn't do that. And it doesn't cause an argument. It's, you have to have the friends that call you out, and, you have to be able to call your friends out as well, because otherwise, if, there's ever arguments or anything, it would never be resolved. So, it's funny, isn't it, that sometimes in the workplace we feel like there's a bigger boundary to overcome when it's a work friend, but probably outside of work, I would just say, oh, don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I just think, it just occurred to me now as you were talking, but it's just quite interesting, isn't it?
It feels like maybe there's more at stake in a work context. When it's a friend that messes up, you can kind of happily just call them out on it and then you sort of draw a line. But I think people can become very easily impacted by what their manager says and does. And it can influence how you feel you're performing at work, which ties into your identity at work. And I think sometimes if we have a tough message that your manager gives us and you weren't expecting it or something, it can really, really shake you up. Whereas sometimes with friends, it's just very said and done, move aside, move on.
Maybe it's a hierarchy type thing a little bit, isn't it? If your manager is slightly in a more powerful position than you, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. But I think also it's the timely feed, if you deal with things quickly, you're not overplaying it in your mind as a manager thinking, oh, I've got to have this conversation, I've got to say something. When actually, if you see something and they've done something, you think, oh, I should give them speech, just do it. Because actually you'd do that with your friends, as you said, Millie, and you would deal with it there and then. You wouldn't let it fester because you're overplaying it in your mind and making it more complicated than it probably is for them. And if you just do it in the moment, then you've done it, you've moved on, and both of you can then carry on with what you were doing for the rest of the day rather than worrying about it.
Yeah, and actually if you sit on it, also then it means that you're then, if you are a manager, coming to that conversation with a bit more apprehension, which also people can sense. So it's like the cycle, it all gets worse and worse and worse, doesn't it?
I suppose the formal side of things, I've had someone who was very confident in my team, with a little bit of arrogance as well. So I definitely had to adjust my style to be more formal with them over time, rather than being how I would naturally be, so they knew what boundaries and the set of the boundaries for them and be clear. But having that open, honest conversation with them as well, but giving them feedback live was better for that situation as well.
Yeah.
Because they go, oh, I didn't do that. But, it's going through that at the time. Yeah, but you're doing it live, so they can't, there's a discussion straight away, isn't there?
Yeah, and you definitely, of course, have to adapt your style depending on the people that you're working with.
Definitely.
Like you say, still be authentic and still be your friendly self while you're doing it. But yeah, some people need a bit more support or a bit more directness, perhaps, than others. And so thinking about our office, we're very lucky that we work with lots of very friendly and hard-working people here at Sagos. Do you think that kind of culture has shaped how you are as a manager? And in what way?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think, obviously, everyone here is authentic. You can see that everyone works hard and there's a teamwork ethic around the business. So if someone's struggling, people notice, or if someone's busy, people walk over. Not every company that I've worked for is like that. It's like, oh, this is my role and I'm doing this, but we're all open to switch and change and help each other. So it's the authenticity part is definitely here through and through to help us every day, which is fantastic.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think we do have quite an informal atmosphere and culture in the office. But I also think we have quite a good kind of impetus to be in the office, and that helps when you're managing, because I think being able to actually regularly know when your manager or the person in your team is going to be there for you to have a conversation face to face, I think that really impacts not only the authenticity piece, but just you being able to build a proper relationship with them. I know people that I've worked with in the past who have had managers that they only see once every 2 months, 3 months, or, maybe they work a more remote job, and that has a big impact on their relationship with the manager. So I think the kind of culture with the laid back atmosphere that we do have here, but also the sense that we're encouraged to be in the office as much as we can, which helps with that.
So really building those strong relationships absolutely does make everything easier. And in a way, I wonder how important it actually is to have those strong relationships and to like your team as well. I'm interested to hear your thoughts, but just as you were both talking then, I was thinking about, we are quite fortunate in this office in that we actually are all quite nice people. We like each other generally, and we all get on. That definitely makes it easier to have difficult conversations, I think. But, could you operate in a team where, okay, you've got a fantastic worker just absolutely smashing out their KPIs, doing all their tasks correctly on time, but they're awful? Is that okay? Is it an issue? Do you have to like your team?
What do you mean by awful?
Difficult or abrupt, or, personality-wise, not a good fit for the team maybe, but in terms of the quality of their work, excellent. So they're a great asset to the business, but you don't necessarily like them.
Yeah, I think if it hasn't happened to me yet, I'm sure it will. Because, there are people that you end up having to work with that you don't necessarily gel with. And I think that's okay. I think my instinct might be to think, well, that person just doesn't like me, or we just don't get on, and we're never gonna have a great relationship. But I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I think it's more that I would need to reflect on how can I best support this person to get the best out of them and to build our relationship together, because I don't have to be friends with everyone that I manage. And if they're doing really well and they're hitting all their KPIs and all of that is going really well for the business, then it's my responsibility as a manager to make sure that I am nourishing that relationship and nurturing that relationship to become as good as it can be, without being hard on myself that we're not friends, because that's also okay.
Yeah, there's a duty of care element almost there, isn't it? To check that they're, not just being horrible because they're super unhappy or something.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I know, what do you think?
Well, I mean, if that person is, obviously had lots of different personalities in a team, but if that person is smashing out everything, great, but you could still then have that conversation to say, if the team's sort of culture or the people you work with, you can obviously call out that person, they're smashing their KPIs, but it's having a knock-on effect potentially to other people around them, so that raising that awareness to them. And if you're not friends with them, it doesn't matter, but you can still be you, and you can still have that conversation with them, definitely.
It's an interesting one in terms of, I was thinking about, I've had an experience in a previous team, and I wasn't the manager of this team, but I was in the team and I really felt the dynamic. But we had some people join the team who were very different personality types. And it does become quite difficult. And I could see the perspective of my manager at the time wondering what to do about the people that had joined. It was 2 new people, and they joined and they didn't want to come to any socials, and they didn't want to socialise outside of work with anyone, which is fine. It's, someone's prerogative whether they want to socialise or not. But there needed to be a conversation to sort of say, you don't have to come to a social, but how can we create this great dynamic so that it doesn't feel like when that person walks into the office that we all have to be serious and change our personalities to fit that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always interesting dynamics with culture, isn't there? Because like you say, if somebody doesn't want to go to a social, then fine, that's their free time.
Yeah.
But how can you embrace and encourage those relationships actually in work time? Which sometimes happens naturally because you're with each other for 8 hours a day. You would think sometimes it would happen naturally, but it doesn't always, does it? No,
and I think if you try and get to know your team, I had a manager, when I first started, and she was always interested, showed interest. She might not have been interested really, but she was showing interest in all the people that she worked with, no matter which team they were in. Sort of gathering information, understanding their work-life balance, home life sort of situations. And that person who might not want to go to social might have something that they have to go and look after a sick family member or something like that. So maybe those socials could move a little bit for those people. So once you get to know your team and learn a bit more each day about that person, then you tend to learn, okay, I didn't realise that. Because you don't know, people aren't open all the time about what happens at home or in their personal life. So it's good to try and show them bits of you at home, or something's happened or something's gone on, but so they can open up a little bit more to you and try and get that conversation going as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess taking this kind of a step further, I think sometimes there is a bit of a perception, and maybe like we're talking about, if there is someone on the team who, doesn't want to come to a social as the example, but sometimes there is a perception that if you are a manager and you're friends with certain people on your team, that maybe your judgment's clouded a bit, there's a bit of favoritism or something like that involved. So how do you make sure that you ensure fairness in that case?
Well, for me, clear expectations and goals for the team, and a vision for the team, so everyone's clear. And you could even have a shared file where everyone's goals and things that you're expecting week on week, month on month are stored. So there's openness around how you're tracking things and what you're doing. So there can't be any of that. It's all fact-based rather than feeling-based.
Yeah.
Yeah, so setting those goals.
Yeah.
So that, it's really transparent actually, that everyone's got their certain targets to be aiming for and how far along they are to achieving that. Yeah, nice.
I was thinking the same of transparency, The last thing that you want is to create an environment where it feels like there's a bit of secrecy within the team and one person's goals are different from another person's and they don't align. Ultimately, as a team, we're trying to work towards a shared vision, and setting that vision and being really clear about how each member of the team contributes towards that, and how that as a whole contributes towards the overall business strategy, I think is a really good way of just making it kind of a level playing field, because you're going to have people within the team who are performing better or worse or are more senior or junior, and just trying to level it out by looking at we are one and how do each of us as a sort of puzzle piece fit into this overall picture, I think.
I like that, the puzzle piece. I'm thinking back to one of my own experiences as well, where I had a manager in one of my early jobs who, kind of thinking about the element of secrecy you were just talking about there, Rachel, she really didn't like us being friends at work, not even from like a manager perspective, but actually peer to peer. If she found out that we had gone to the pub after work or something, she would be absolutely furious. She used to separate people because it was too cliquey. The office was one room, by the way, so we all sat in the same room, so it was hard to be a clique in an open plan one room office. But it's just so interesting, isn't it? Because I think from my perspective, to be able to work as that puzzle fitting together to achieve that vision, you do have to get on to some extent and to want to give each other feedback and encourage each other and build those strong relationships. So yeah, it just feels odd that you would ever kind of ban people from hanging out outside of work.
It's only going to have a negative effect on a team, isn't it? Because you're just feeling like there's too many rules and it's who you can and can't be friends with, which is very childish.
And then actually the secrecy does come out, because we'd want to go for dinner after work and we'd have to like WhatsApp and leave at staggered time so it wasn't suspicious, you know. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. So what advice would you give to someone who is kind of straddling that line of informal versus formal friendship, but they've maybe got a boundary they need to put in place for a difficult situation? How can people handle that if they're struggling? It's just like the agony aunt section. I feel like we should have got people to write in their problems.
Next time. I think it all comes back to, and it's something that I say in almost every workshop that I run and every session that I do, and it's often around like leadership and management and team dynamics. The best thing that you can do as a team member and as a manager is to be really clear and transparent in your communication. And I think if you are worried about straddling that line between being too formal or too informal, I think being really clear about, we're going to have a conversation now that's going to be quite difficult. I'm going to put on my management hat. I know we're friends, but I'm going to put on that hat and I'm going to step into this conversation. I'd love it if you would do the same with me. Just trying to really be like transparent about it. I think if I was to be managing someone who I was friends with, and all of a sudden switch up my tone and go into something more formal without having given them a bit of a pre-warning, I think it would just ring alarm bells for them.
Jarring, isn't it?
Yeah. So and that's part of that authenticity thing of just trying to be really transparent, trying to be really clear. I'm going to step into this kind of tricky conversation and I want you to be open and honest with me. I'm going to be a bit vulnerable with you. I'm quite expressive. I like to kind of talk through what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling, and I hope that creates less of a jarring experience if I need to straddle that line.
And you probably have some kind of conversation or some kind of signposting, I guess, if you're having a difficult conversation with anyone in your team, even if you're not, the best of friends. So yeah, just making sure that that's consistent and, like you say, you are clear about what's going to happen, what the expectations are, is a really good piece of advice. Thank you, Rach.
Sharon? Yeah, I think Rachel summed it up very well. You're still being authentic and true to yourself, having that conversation with them, but you're probably at least they've got an expectation. They know what's coming based on how you position that and how you open it. And it obviously then makes the room a little bit less stressful or that situation. So yeah, well done, Rachel. It's a good shout.
So let's think about the other angle then. So you've had the difficult conversation and now you've got to, I don't know, go and commute together or get the train together or something. How do you transition back?
Good question.
On the spot.
That is a tough one, I think.
I think you've just got to carry on though, haven't you? That thing has been dealt with as far as you're concerned and they're concerned. You've talked about next steps, what's going to happen next for them, how you can support them. So I think as long as you end it in a good way to help to show them that you're being supportive and encouraging, then you can just carry on. And if you've built that relationship already, you should be able to just carry on and carry on and then become back to normal again. You know, I'm in a situation in reverse of this at the moment where, you know, my manager, we were both on the same level in our previous company, obviously friends. You know, I've organised hen do's, I've done lots of things for her, and now she's in a lot higher position, and we just have really open, you know, mostly in the car on the commute or on the train about, you know, if there's something she wants to say, or, oh, you know, have you looked at that or looked at that, then it's easier because you've had that other relationship and we can handle it. So I suppose I'm probably an easier one to do it with because you know, obviously I know what needs to be done and how it needs to be done, but she must find it very difficult.
Yeah.
And I know she's finding it difficult the way that she starts talking and the sort of the positioning of things. About what needs to happen, especially in a new environment or new way of doing things. So,
and that's a really interesting dynamic as well, where you were, I guess, maybe peers and friends, and then somebody's been promoted.
Yeah,
that can be quite an interesting dynamic to have to handle. Has that ever happened to you, Rach? Have you got an experience like that, and how did you handle it?
I guess for me, it hasn't necessarily happened in that way, but it does remind me of, like I was saying earlier, that reference to mentoring, that I've had a lot of mentoring relationships when I was a teacher. And the dynamic that I found most difficult was when I was having to mentor people that had 20, 30 years of career experience in a different career, and maybe themselves had been a manager or, you know, had led a team, and I was having to then become effectively their manager for the year.
And is that because they'd switched careers, so they'd done 20, 30 years in something else and then come into education?
Exactly.
Right, okay.
So that was I haven't had a situation where I've necessarily been promoted within a team and then had to manage people that I was on the same level as, but I have had that strange dynamic, which was really difficult for me. And again, I was in quite an early stage of my career, but I think I really had to reflect on trying to not take things personally, because I think it's a very natural thing when you think about that hierarchy. Usually, not all the time, but usually, the older you are, the more senior you are. So being a young female, sometimes having to manage older men was quite an interesting dynamic, and I really had to channel a different side of my personality that wasn't the I want to be your friend kind of person that I can be. It was much more direct and more formal, and still a version of me, but just a slightly different and more serious version, maybe.
Yeah, different versions. We all have to be different versions, don't we?
Because you've got to be taken seriously as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such an interesting one, isn't it? I think thinking about my own experience as well, like when that has happened actually here, being kind of leading a team that is full of people that you were friends with. Actually, I think sometimes it works to your advantage because you already know exactly how that person works. You know what annoys them, or, you know, whatever it might be. So you know what not to do and what to do to get the best out of them. So yeah, it can be helpful, but it also can be a bit tricky as well. It depends on, in a way, the emotions attached to it. I think if someone is happy for you as a friend, it can be very different to somebody who is, I don't know, not jealous, but, you know, thinks that they should have been promoted, or however they see it as well. So yeah, taking the emotions into account, it can be.
Sorry, Sharon.
I was going to say it might be down to a bit of respect as well. So you've come from the team, you've worked hard, you've probably been supporting those people anyway without them realising it, and then obviously people hopefully would see that you've been promoted based on the fact that you've been doing have those skills already.
Just a continuation of that in a way.
And you've just been recognised for that.
I was just going to say that it reminds me of literally just a couple of days ago, I was running a program with an insurance firm, and we run their early careers program. But a lot of what we talk about is to do with management and leadership for them eventually as they step into that potentially. And there was a really interesting comment made where someone talked about having quite an interesting relationship with a manager of theirs. And we had a really good discussion about how you can depersonalize a conversation when you're struggling with a manager. And they were talking, this person kind of talked about how they don't get on very well with their manager and they need to give some feedback upwards to that manager. And we had a really good discussion around like personality profiling. And for this particular organisation, they use insights, but any of those kind of classic personality profiling tools like DISC and Insights, I think it can be a really useful tool to depersonalise that conversation. And this person thought that they could maybe use that as a way to approach a conversation with their manager. And I think it can be done in reverse as well, having that conversation with someone that you manage, using a tool like DISC or like Insights, something like that, to talk about how you like to be communicated with, how you like to receive feedback, all those things that are just inherent to your personality that aren't part of just random preferences. But I think it just gives it like a bit more of a, kind of more formal way of explaining what your needs are.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to actually just knowing your team a little bit, doesn't it? Again, like we were saying, you don't have to be best friends with them, but as long as you know their modus operandi and you know how they like to be communicated with, that's definitely going to be a step in the right direction anytime you have to have a tough conversation. So we've spoken a little bit already about adapting our style, and we know that as good managers we have to adapt, like we were just talking about, maybe using DISC or Insights or something similar to accommodate the way that other people like to be communicated with. So thinking about giving feedback, because that's often one of the types of difficult conversations, even though they shouldn't be difficult, but that sometimes people feel are difficult conversations to have. How do you approach those types of conversations? Do you think it's helpful to be a bit more formal, or can informal work?
I think informal still works, as long as you're constructive in that feedback and the setting. You could still be in a coffee shop giving them feedback, or going for a walk, or you don't have to be formally on a boardroom table sitting opposite each other, because that just makes it, I think, would make it more difficult for you giving the feedback, let alone receiving it on the other side. Obviously, we've all been in those situations, haven't we, had feedback across the table. But I think just going out for a walk or a coffee, or just sitting next to them at the desk sometimes, if it's not too sensitive, can be done informally, definitely. Mm-hmm. What about you, Rachel?
I think I like to have that conversation with people in my team of, what do you like, or how would you like me to handle a situation? If I was to give you some feedback that was quite constructive, where would you like that conversation to take place? Are you happy for it to be in a coffee shop? Because I am. But maybe they might have different preferences. And I think, again, I sound like a broken record, but I'm coming back to that same, which is, I think, at the core of what makes a good manager, that have you clearly and transparently communicated your needs with each other, both ways? My manager here at Sagos, Emily Link, who I think has been on the podcast, maybe?
Yep, she has. Yeah. Talking about management as well.
There we go. She's a really good example of being really open and transparent, and she often, starts the conversation by asking me what feedback I have for her as well. And I think creating that really open dynamic, I think, is really, really helpful. So yeah, I've kind of deviated from your original question, but I think that having a transparent relationship where you know that you're both going to be asking for constructive feedback. So what Emily does with me is she says, when we check in every month or so, can you bring what you would like me to stop, start and continue doing? And it's just a simple framework where it makes me really reflect and think about how I do that with the people that I manage as well.
So let's talk about setting a little bit, because you touched on it there, Sharon, and we were chatting about it in the pre-show as well. So how important is setting, and how can we use that as a boundary effectively if we need to? Or should we be using it as a boundary?
Well, good question. But I think, as Rachel said, understanding what their needs are and making sure that they're comfortable in whatever setting is best for them is important to know. But I think a setting does make a difference. You know, imagine we're all going in to do a presentation and you walk in and it's so formal, but you weren't expecting it. It's going to throw you off guard, isn't it? And put you 10 steps back from where you were before you walked through that door. So I think understanding, as Rachel said, what they would like is perfect to then lead into the conversation of where you want to go. So, you know, back in the day, I suppose when I first started, it was always a formal environment, you know, across a desk, sitting there. And it always makes it difficult, I think. And so then as out of different companies that you've worked for, the different ways, and definitely at Sagos, it's a lot more informal, as we said at the beginning of the episode, that, you know, go across and just sit down, have lunch together, or go for a walk up the road to the park, or have an ice cream when it's a sunny day. Yeah. You know, all of that helps, I think, to make them feel comfortable if that's what they want to do. Yeah. Definitely check with them.
Nice. Yeah. Just trying to think about what my own preferences are when I get feedback. I think I like to write stuff down because otherwise I forget, you know. So I'm trying to imagine like walking in the park. Maybe not. Yeah. Maybe I need a desk so I can
just press record on your phone and let it record the conversation, you know.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You know, you don't have to have a pad or a notepad. I love a pen and paper as well, though, but there's loads of different
ways
me, like,
these process days. A bit as well. And
a park bench or something. So I do think there's like, it's nice to come out of the like office environment sometimes, especially if it's not too serious, the feedback that you're giving, if it's quite informal, just like a catch up.
I think what I've done before sometimes is like started with a walk and then like come back. So it's like more general check-in and then come back to actually talk about like specific work stuff or whatever that needs to happen. So a balance maybe. Yeah, balance. As with all things in life, it's about balance. So final question for you today. The end is in sight. If you could give one piece of advice to new managers about this formal, informal balance we've been talking about, what would it be? Start with you, Rach.
Big question.
The money question.
The big money question. I think it would have to be that you don't have to, when you become a manager, you don't have to become someone else. You don't have to change who you are, change what your style is, change your preferences. But it can be really helpful to be a little bit more intentional about how you show up, about your professional posture, about how you can influence people both positively and negatively. And so I would say if I was new to management and I was thinking about the difference between being formal and informal, I would probably sit down and really think about what kind of manager do I want to be? How do I want to make people feel at the end of the day? People really don't often remember what you say, but they do remember how you make them feel. And so be intentional, maybe write yourself a list of kind of the attributes and the characteristics that you want to have as a manager, and then think about how your daily behaviours can add to that list or represent you in the best way possible.
Fantastic. Bit of reflection, figuring out what values you want to have as a manager and how you want your team to show up as well, and role model that. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Rachel. You've got to have your own vision. You can't follow someone else's vision. You have to be true to yourself, you know, authentic. We've said all those words already, but you definitely have to think about your team, how you want things to be day to day, and then you can just have that discussion with them and be open up front. And you might need to tweak a little bit as time goes to get more comfortable, but definitely having that real sit-down moment and vision of where you want it to be for yourself, not following your previous manager or somebody before. Just take those best bits.
Yeah, cherry pick the bits you like the best.
Yes.
Put that into your vision, reflect on who you want to be. Yeah. Oh, fabulous. That's it. We just, that end of the podcast, we're done. That's like the best advice for managers ever. Wow, thank you both so much for joining me on the sofa and in the big yellow chair today. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. This is one of the episodes as part of our leadership and management series. More episodes to come. And if you want to watch them, make sure you like, you subscribe so that we show up on your YouTube and LinkedIn feeds or wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you next time.